Is OU suddenly the savior of the Big 12? Texas sized mess at Texas. And we're looking for some big games to help boost the Big 12 reputation. We're talking Big 12. Of course, this is Big 12 Breakdown. We come to you every Wednesday night, 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central. This is your show of record. If you love Big 12 football, this is the place to be because we really break it down. We go a solid 30 minutes plus talking about the Big 12. So with me this week, Sean Cordy of Today's U. We've got David Smith from Smoking Musket on SB Nation. And also from SB Nation, David Potter from Rock Chalk Talk. Gentlemen, thanks so much for the time this week. This should be a good discussion on the Big 12 and what could be a really significant week looking back to last Saturday before we spin it forward to this Saturday, talking about Oklahoma looking like garbage for 3 quarters, holding serve, coming back, winning in Knoxville, and hopefully Tennessee propels this into a good season to really help the conference out. But that Oklahoma win was pretty significant, Sean. Your thoughts about the Sooners and really anything else that happened in the Big 12 last weekend?
Yeah, good starting point with the Sooners is that as much as it probably would have been great to see them blow out the Bulls, as much as that wasn't likely, as we saw with the first 3 quarters, I really like how they actually had to struggle to come back for that win. They show that they can hang with those top teams and kick over the bucket to win the game eventually in the end, double overtime. Baker Mayfield showed that he has a great tenacity. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays with broken ribs like Tony Romo has. He really reminded me of Tony Romo in the pros right now, how he can handle late game situations under pressure like that. There's a lot that needs to be worked on still. The running game still hasn't progressed with Pirine yet, like we imagined it would be, but it's really promising seeing how that came together for the last 3 quarters, counting 2 overtimes. So they are possibly the saviors if they can keep that up.
I think I found somebody on Twitter, meaning Sean, who also appreciates the play of Tony Romo. I think the guy has gotten bashed forever. That's another show. Okay, he's gotten bashed forever, but exceptional quarterback, and of course he, with the help of the New York Giants clock management, pulled one out for the Cowboys against the Giants. All right, David, your thoughts about Oklahoma, and not necessarily just the Sooners, but your thoughts about the league thus far. We've played 2 weeks where the conference stands, and maybe the question for you guys as well, because there are positions on both sides of this question, regardless of the conference, regardless of the region. Do you root for everybody in your conference, or are they the enemies and you root for everybody to beat the teams that you're competing against? People side different ways when it comes to that. So, David, your thoughts about the Big 12 right now?
Well, you got 2 Davids.
I'm sorry. I thought I was going to David Smith. My bad. I do have 2 Davids. I'm going to have to distinguish that the rest of the night. Let's start with David Smith. Hey, David.
Sure. It's actually kind of weird for a West Virginia blogger to talk about that because we don't have a lot of rivalries, and so also whenever it comes to the Big 12, we don't have a lot of loyalty. I guess a lot of loyalty points to put up, but it's absolutely. I mean, you almost have to root for OU anytime anybody goes out to represent the Big 12, just because. I mean, it's all about the playoff now, and so as long as your conference looks good. It's going to help at any point whenever someone's going to try to get to that playoff. And so, I mean, I was happy that OU won, so I don't know how the other guys feel about it.
Hey, David. Second, David Potter, talking about Kansas. Now, David Smith brought up the whole college football playoff has probably changed some thought when it comes to rivalry and who you root for, but not to diminish your standing in the Big 12, but being Kansas, I'm guessing you're not thinking playoff at the outset of the season, so you can probably still hold some of those grudges against your brethren in the Big 12.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see a Big 12 get a representative in the playoff, especially after what happened last year. So, you know, there's some rivalry with K-State. I'd rather it not be them, but I don't think this year that's going to be an issue. But overall, yeah, I'm rooting for the Big 12 in general. I'd like to see, you know, whether it's Oklahoma or really especially maybe a non-name brand team like TCU or Baylor get into the playoff. But yeah, speaking as a team, as a fan of a team that's out of it, I'm just rooting for the conference to put in a good showing this year.
And what stands out to you for the first couple weeks of play?
I think Baylor is probably catching a little too much heat for their defense. I mean, they're still blowing teams out. They're putting up 9-10 yards a play, which is more than enough to blow out the level of competition. I know the last couple of years they've been completely shutting down these weak or non-conference opponents, and they haven't quite done that this year. But I think a little too much is being made from that. They're still holding them down to around 4 yards a play. They're still playing good defense. I know you don't want to give up 30-plus points to Lamar, but when you can blow them out the way that they did, it's not a concern for me. But I know a lot of people have been talking about Baylor's defense, saying that it might come back to bite them this year, but I don't think it will be any more so than in the past. And then TCU looks like they're probably, if I had to pick a team to beat, that's probably them. Oklahoma, it was a good win in Tennessee. It's a tough place to win. I don't think Tennessee is probably – I'm not quite as high on them as maybe some other people are, so I don't know how big a win we'll call that by the end of the year. But at least they didn't suffer the loss. At least they're still going strong. We've got teams at the top of the Big 12 that look to be in contention for maybe a playoff spot at the end of the year.
Hey, Sean, let's stay on that Baylor theme. Your thoughts about the Bears' play through a couple weeks?
Put it in a word or 3 words. Hot and cold. They're one of the worst teams to open up games. They're averaging giving up 21 points in the first half, and that's against SMU and Lamar. So that's not very good. But then they totally turn it on in the second half. They've averaged only 5 points given up in the second half. So for whatever reason, we really start to learn how the teams are playing in the second half and just shut them down. And our offense completely explodes either way you look at it. But as David said, yeah, the defense is getting a lot of they're catching a lot of wind for the problems that they have on defense, especially in the pass game. And even the rushing defense was a strong suit last year, but it seems to be figured out by other offenses this year. Like Sean Oakman hasn't done much at all, but Jamal Palmer coming back, he's been the star for Baylor's defense so far. But I think we're going to eventually start coming back and learning how to actually start games, not just finish them.
Hey, Sean, we've been going 4 weeks strong with the Big 12 breakdown. We've talked Texas every week. Makes sense. It's the Big 12, and Texas is prominent. But we've been talking about Texas in a bad light every week. They did win a game. They beat Rice pretty comfortably on the scoreboard. It didn't look very impressive in regards to their dominance of play. And then, of course, the athletic director gone. And that's more football related than anything, especially at that university. Just your thoughts about what's going on in Austin.
In Austin, gosh, it's really weird that there have that many changes right away. And I have to admit, I was surprised to see Hurd start the game last week. I thought with Strong taking away the offensive play calling away last week, he tried to only change one variable. But having Hurd in this new system right away seemed like a stroke of genius. To me, honestly, he had a 91 quarterback rating, I think, from ESPN. So he was efficient and looks like he can lead this team. Rice is a bit of an underrated team, and like you said, didn't look that impressive watching it. But seeing them put up the points like they did, I think it's time to start thinking that maybe they aren't going to lose to those little underdogs that we think that they could have, like last week.
Now, again, doing this for 4 weeks, and this kind of goes back to the discussion we were having 5 minutes ago about do you root for the other teams in your league or do you just despise them and you don't care what's going on with the league and who else can make it if your team's not going to make it. When I've brought up Texas to you three and then our other contributors around the Big 12, that gets more ire and eye-rolling than any other team when I bring up Texas. So we'll start with David Smith. Your thoughts about Texas and where this could possibly go and how they fix what they have going in football right now.
Well, you know from the last time I was on, I believe that Charlie Strong will actually make this program actually stable again and have them being a conference at least contender within the next 4 years. I know Sean, I think he's actually there for that, and I'm sure he's still rolling his eyes at that. But I mean, I think at this point in this team, it's Charlie Strong's second year. I think he still needs to bring in the recruits that he's been doing for the past however months that he's been in, like having a very good recruiting class. I think they just need to stay the course. The offense is not good. We are absolutely understanding on that. I mean, whenever you get outgained 462, 227, and have 3 interceptions kind of help you out when the game against Rice, that does not help. And honestly, upcoming for next week, this Cal game might be awful, especially whenever after you have all this turnover with the AD. Cal's a good team, and they're actually, I would say Oregon's going to have a really tough time with them because they have to go to Cal to play later in the year. So, I mean, I would say the Golden Bears might give the Longhorns a bit of trouble, but I mean, you can't get rid of Charlie Strong within, like, by the time that he's been there. I think it's going to be fun. For this year, they might be looking at, like, 6th, 7th in the conference if they don't figure it out offense. Something like that.
Yeah, David, you're right about Cal. Coming off a 5-7 campaign, and they took USC and UCLA to the wire last year. They should have been in postseason play, and they're better this year. Most people know about Jared Goff, one of the best quarterbacks in the land, and he is really high on NFL draft boards. And they got playmakers around him now that can do some damage as well. And so Texas is going to see a proficient passing offense. They're going to see the type of passing offense that you don't see that much at this level, where there aren't many missed throws, dropped passes, many missed connections. You have to force the issue on defense. You either have to be in Goff's face or you have to have that tight of coverage because they're not going to misfire themselves. They're pretty good. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting game because Texas probably across the board still has the better athletes top to bottom on the roster than Cal, but the Golden Bears can really sling it. David Potter, your thoughts about Texas? Anything else that stands out to you before we attack this week's games?
Yeah, I just think, like he had mentioned, they got significantly out-yarded by Rice by about a couple of yards. Only managed 11 first downs the entire game in a home game against Rice. I mean, that's pretty rough. And now going into a game against Cal, who, like you said, they're gonna run off a play every 10 or 12 seconds if they can. They're going to try and get into a shootout with you. And Texas is just not built for that this year, putting up 270 yards against Rice. That awful first week showing against Notre Dame. I think they're in real trouble for that game. Moving forward, I don't think Charlie Strong is on the hot seat yet, but he's going to have to get some things figured out, particularly on offense. And then just as far as getting as much as he can out of those high-profile recruits that he's got on that roster, if he wants to keep that job, because right now the early returns are just not there.
So you took on Memphis this past Saturday. It was pretty close for a considerable period of time. Memphis, pretty good football team. Again, they've matched up with the likes of UCLA and Ole Miss in the past couple seasons and stood up to the challenge. Just your thoughts about the Jayhawks, what you've seen the first couple weeks. I know you haven't expected much, but at the same time, just your thoughts about where Kansas football is right now based on 2 weeks of play.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a long season. Everybody knew it was going to be a long season going in when you go into the year with, I believe it was 62 scholarship players on the roster. I mean, that's not a recipe for success. There was maybe a little fool's gold in the 570 yards they put up in week 1 against South Dakota State. The offense looked a lot closer against Memphis to what we'd seen the past 5 years under Charlie Weiss and Turner Gill than it did that first week. I think the offense has improved a little bit. I think Rob Likens looks like he's probably going to be pretty good as an offensive coordinator once he gets the players in place. But right now the depth isn't there. The team speed on defense just isn't there. If they're going to win a game this year, they're going to have to just try and really get things clicking on offense and hope for a couple of friendly bounces, a couple of turnovers, because right now the roster is just not at a Big 12 level, and everyone kind of knew that going into this year. It's a little harder to watch and unfold as a fan, but yeah, it's a rebuilding process, and everybody knows that the coaches are just going to need some time before we can really evaluate the job they're doing.
David, I'm looking at the Big 12 schedule for September 19th, this Saturday. Bye week already?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You guys have an
mercifully.
off week?
Yeah, mercifully, just to recover from the Memphis game. They've had a funky schedule the last few years. They actually had bye weeks in week 1 both the last 2 years under Charlie Weiss. I'm not sure if they were having trouble with scheduling or what the issue was, but they get a week off to rest up and prepare for a Rutgers team that's having plenty of problems of their own, so maybe that'll end up working to their benefit and they can try and sneak a road win out of this year.
All right, David Smith. Bye week. West Virginia bye week too, right?
Absolutely.
And we got the smallest league. We only have 10 teams to talk about, and then they throw 3 bye weeks at us.
Sean, you're a Baylor guy, right?
Yeah.
You got all bye week guys. That's what
Way to go. This is
Man,
great.
that's bad scheduling by somebody. I don't know who to blame on that
This
one.
is the best team Baylor's played this week. Come on.
True.
It is. They can't give up any yards this week. No points or no yards. So you guys are going to have to really enlighten me on the rest of the schedule here. So, David, we'll stay with you, David Smith. What games are you looking out for this weekend?
I mean, I already talked about the Texas-Cal game, but I'm very interested in the Texas Tech-Arkansas game, mostly because Arkansas was riding so high coming into this year, and losing to Toledo after I can't believe Brett Bielema goes and loses to an Ohio team after going out and talking about Ohio State's schedule. Like, you don't even lose to Ohio State, you lose to Toledo. That's pretty rough. So what I'm really worried about is that Texas Tech has been playing decently, but their rush defense over the past few seasons, not great. And this is a very bad team to face whenever you have a struggling rush defense, especially whenever they're going to be all hyped up after losing to Toledo and taking them lightly. And so I'm very worried for Texas Tech. I mean, they're going to be full of whatever vinegar going into this game, Arkansas is. And so that's going to be rough. And one thing I would say to keep in mind, that Toledo team is playing Iowa State. And so I don't know if Sam B. Richardson is going to be able to outmatch the Rockets.
Yeah, if Arkansas ends up doing something in the SEC, then you guys can really start to connect the dots and really push it if Iowa State actually plays pretty well against Toledo. I don't know that anyone's going to buy that, but you can try. I know you guys don't make the schedule, so I hate to bash the Big 12, but I do it on occasion, and Sean's starting to smile. But, yeah, the scheduling in the Big 12, it has to get better. We had 2 games to talk about non-conference, and this is another pretty rough week, and I can't wait till you guys start playing each other, and then we can see. And I can't wait to see Oklahoma play Kansas State and Oklahoma State play TCU, and those 4 or 5 teams that I'm really interested in seeing play each other. So we should have 2 or 3 really good games each week. Sean, being my Big 12 go-to guy, you're my expert. What am I looking for this week out of the schedule?
All right, so it's a pretty good slate, in my opinion, actually, even with the 3 bye weeks. You got Kansas State taking on Kansas State taking on Louisiana Tech. I think that's going to be a great game. LA Tech, they're averaging 50 points a game. Kansas State, they've only played South Dakota and
UTSA.
drawing blank series, but yeah, only allowing 1.5 points per game. That's hard to refute. That their defense is actually better than people expected. So I'm really wanting to see how their quarterback, Hubner, can play. If he's been playing and game managing really well lately, so I really want to see how he can try to dictate the game and take the ball away from Tech's hands. And then, as David mentioned, the Arkansas game, Texas Tech, that's Texas Tech, fast offense, Arkansas, Bielema talking about how he hates that style of offense. I like seeing those 2 butt heads. And then we also have Tulsa and Oklahoma. And the reason I like that game is Philip Montgomery coming under the Art Briles coaching tree heading into Norman is going to be pretty awesome. That's the same offense that beat Oklahoma by 30-some points last year, technically. So let's see how they can hang with the Sooners this week.
Okay, Sean. Again, very much respect your football acumen. Definitely. But, man, I just think that's a rough schedule. We do understand that if we look around the country, we see Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, Miami, Nebraska, UCLA, BYU, LSU, Auburn, etc. There's a few other ones out there.
Comparatively, but put it by itself, I like it.
Okay.
It's more of a hipster slate. That's really what it is.
There you go.
Yeah.
So if you guys are watching one game in the Big 12 this week, Sean, what are you watching?
I gotta say it's the Arkansas Texas Tech game.
Okay. David Smith, what game are you watching?
Arkansas, Texas Tech. Well, Arkansas, Texas Tech, but I'm very interested to see by how much Cal is going to beat Texas by, and if that crowd starts to get unruly and like Bama starts like taking out people on the field, that might be good.
Yeah, I want to see Cal in Texas. That would be the game by far I would want to see. David Potter, what game are you watching this weekend since the Jayhawks are taking the week off?
I'd say it'd be between those two. I'd like to see if Texas can show any signs of improvement, especially against a team like Cal that's going to try and lure them into a shootout, which they're not really built for. And then Texas Tech and Arkansas, I think. I'd really like to see if Texas Tech's offense is for real. They haven't played anybody yet, but they've been putting up big numbers, big points. It'll be interesting to see them go up against a quality opponent and see if the offense is really as good as it's looked so far, because if it's not, they've got a lot of problems on defense and they could really be in trouble. If the offense can keep clicking, then they could be a team that picks up a few Big 12 wins and maybe goes to a bowl game this year.
Okay, before we do our round of predictions, we'll stay with you, David Potter. We'll stay with you. And any player through 2 weeks, probably coming from your own team since you're locked in on those games, but throughout the Big 12 that maybe you didn't know a whole lot about or had some question marks about, maybe a freshman who's really stood up, anybody that maybe we don't know about right now that we should know about?
Just to try and give some publicity to a Kansas player, defensive end Ben Goodman is a senior this year. He's actually, I believe he's top 5 in FBS in sacks with 3.5 through 2 games. He really is a good player, and I think if he played alongside better defensive linemen, he'd be more of a household name. So he's going to keep an eye on. But other than that, obviously Mahomes at Texas Tech is putting up just video game numbers, so he's been really impressive so far. And then I'm really interested to see how Seth Russell does at Baylor as the season goes on, if he can just continue that line of Baylor quarterbacks that just puts up ridiculous stats, or because he looks to me at least to be a little step down from Petty and RG3. So I'll be interested to see if he can keep the numbers going down there.
David Smith, same question to you in regards to West Virginia or throughout the Big 12. Any players that we don't know about right now that have really impressed you?
Specifically in Morgantown, I'd have to say Javon Durant. This kid is 18 years old. He's fresh, true freshman, came out of high school, and the first catch he makes against Georgia Southern in his first game of his collegiate career is a touchdown pass. And so he ends up actually doing really well whenever it comes to his starting. I believe it's a Z wide receiver in West Virginia's offense. He's actually been doing really well, and he's quick as hell. So that's somebody that I would say you should actually keep in mind whenever it comes to West Virginia football. But throughout the Big 12, I'm very curious in Joe Huebner. I know K-State, like with Jesse Hurts going down at quarterback, as Sean was saying, he's been playing just fine whenever it comes to the game manager role. But I'm curious to see if he can become more than that. He did just fine whenever it came against UTSA away in the Alamo Dome. He didn't get any touchdown passes or anything like that, but he threw for 240-some yards. So I'm curious to see if he takes that next level and decides to be K-State's new the savior, I suppose. I don't know, any of those guys, Colin, any of them, pretty much.
Sean, is there anybody that we're going to know about in December that you can give us a bit of a jump on in regards to somebody who could break out this year?
Just a quick add-on to the Huebner role is that he hasn't ever started his football game probably since junior high. In high school, he bounced around multiple positions in offense, playing a little bit of quarterback, but never started. So Snyder really likes how he knows other positions and knows how the whole team works. So that's why he's been able to manage games pretty well. But sticking around for December, I'd say you're going to hear Corey Coleman's name called out. I see him as a Biletnikoff nominee at least. He's leading the league by the nation in touchdowns and receiving yards, averaging 30 yards a catch. Huge numbers against small schools, but think about it that the last 15 Biletnikoff winners haven't scored 4 touchdowns in a game before. So we're seeing someone that's done stuff against competition that other players have done it before too. So, and he's doing it at a higher level. So let's see if he can keep it up through December.
All right, David Potter, prediction time. Here we go. Let's run through the Big 12. You ready?
All right.
All right, we got Oklahoma, number 16 in the country, hosting Tulsa.
I don't think that'll be much of an issue for Oklahoma. Maybe there'll be a bit of a letdown after that big finish against Tennessee, but I think they'll roll pretty easily in that one.
Bulldogs of Louisiana Tech are at Kansas State.
Louisiana Tech can put up points. Kansas State has been very good defensively so far, so something's got to give there. I think Kansas State is going to kind of plod along this year and win a lot of close games, and I think this will be one of them. I'll pick Kansas State, but maybe by single digits or 10 points at most.
Oklahoma State has snuck into the poll at number 25, taking on Texas San Antonio, a team that hung with the Wildcats of Arizona, stayed within 10 points there.
Yeah, Oklahoma State hasn't done anything real impressive through the first 2 weeks, but I do like their team this year. I like the makeup of their defense, especially. I think they'll win comfortably over UTSA.
All right, we got Texas Tech at Arkansas. Razorbacks ran wild in the second half, especially. You talked about the rush defense. This game's at Arkansas.
I'm just not sold on Texas Tech's offense yet, despite the numbers they're putting up. I think Arkansas will be very motivated coming off of that loss. I think Arkansas will win by double digits.
All right, David, we've talked it up. Cal at Texas.
I think Cal wins easily. Texas just can't put up the yards, can't put up the points to keep up with that fast-paced offense at Cal. I think Cal wins that one as well.
All right, TCU has dropped from number 2 to number 3. They're at home. They take on SMU.
Should be pretty similar to the Baylor game. SMU seems to have improved maybe just a little bit, but not nearly enough to compete with TCU. I think that'll be a blowout.
Then we got an Iowa State team that played a pretty good game at home against Iowa last week. Couple turnovers late, and Iowa pulled it out. They go on the road to Toledo. The victors over the SEC's Arkansas Razorbacks.
Yeah, this is kind of a tough one for me. I mean, Iowa State blew out one of the better teams in FCS in the first week, and then hung in with Iowa last week. Last year, they were a really bad team, and I'm not. Other than just being a year older, a year more experienced, I'm not sure where any changes are coming from. And then is Toledo beating Arkansas a total fluke, or are they actually going to be a really good team this year? I'm not real familiar with them. I will say Toledo just because they're at home and they're favored. I'll go with Toledo in a close game.
Toledo at home in the Glass City. All right, David Smith, here we go. We got Tulsa at Oklahoma.
OU. I'm just going to give you just names. Just there you go, OU. I'm taking them.
Very good. Louisiana Tech at Kansas State.
K-State. While Tech's good, I agree with Sean. They're actually legitimately good. But Bill Stein is not going to lose to Louisiana State.
All right. Texas San Antonio. I mentioned the game they had against Arizona. It was pretty close. At number 25, Oklahoma State.
I think the Pokes are going to win this one. They'll be fine.
Okay, Texas Tech at Arkansas.
I think Arkansas wins, but also I think they make it hurt really bad, a lot. It might hurt me.
I've not seen the line in this game, but I'm interested in it. Cal at Texas.
Cal's going to win, and Bevo is actually going to leave Like he's gonna cry for the first time in like his life. Can both can they cry? I can only assume they can cry. We're gonna find
David,
out.
I'm missing some of the one-liners. Hopefully everybody else is getting it. But I caught a little Bevo remark in there, but hopefully that translates for everyone. SMU at TCU.
This one could be fun because TCU's defense, they've had so many, whatever, I don't even want to call it media, but it's just like attrition due a couple injuries and one guy leaving for personal reasons. I think they'll be fine, but it's going to hurt whenever it comes to lower in the Big 12 race. But I think TCU will be good.
And finally, we got Iowa State at Toledo.
I think the Rockets win, and a bunch of people called fine ball on Monday wanting to annex Toledo for Vandy for the SEC, just to make it so that they have SEC people in Ohio.
Okay, Sean, it's your turn. Let's start with Oklahoma at home against the Golden Hurricane.
All right. Yeah, I think they're going to be ready. I think the Sooners are going to take it as much as I say. Tulsa is good. Offensively, Oklahoma's going to take it.
All right, Sean, I've been hearing about this game for weeks from you. Louisiana Tech at Kansas State.
It's at Kansas State. You got to go with Kansas State. They don't lose to Manhattan very often.
Texas San Antonio, Oklahoma State.
Oak State.
All right, we got Texas Tech taking on the Hogs of Arkansas.
This is a coin flip. I might as well pull it a quarter. I think Clay Holmes is the real deal. I'm going to go with Tech.
Really? That's a coin flip. Wow, I'm surprised. I think Arkansas wins the game by 20 points.
All right.
Riots in Fayetteville if this happens.
What's that, David?
I'm on their bandwagon. I think that they can do it.
Okay. All right. I know you love the offense. I knew that this was your dark horse pick this season, the Red Raiders. All right, well, we got Cal going to Texas.
I Googled it. Cows can cry, so Bevo's going to cry. Longhorns, the Bears are going to take them.
Okay. SMU at TCU.
I'm going to go with TCU. I mean, that's
All right. We have to at least throw it out there, yes.
Yeah.
We're all going with TCU big, I'm sure. Iowa State at Toledo.
Do it.
Let's go Iowa State. I'm not familiar with Toledo, but I still have to have some faith in Iowa State that they can start lessening the turnovers.
Okay. Nobody's having any clue on Iowa State and Toledo. They're just making picks, I can tell. I would be too. So, all right. Good discussion tonight, guys. It's Big 12 Breakdown. It's every Wednesday night, 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central, talking Big 12 football, and we will have some great discussions coming up with conference play starting very, very soon. So, for Sean Cordy from today's view, we got David Smith from Smoking Musket, talking West Virginia on SB Nation, and also from SB Nation's Rock Chalk Jayhawk. It's, of course, Rock Chalk Talk, as they do the little play on words there at Kansas, and we got David Potter. So, gentlemen, thanks so much for being on the line. It was a great discussion, and we'll catch you next time.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.